We're about a week away from Halloween, and you know what that means, folks. It's time to pump out more slop. Hi everyone, my name's Diabetor, and today I'm going to show you 4 powerful Halloween-themed builds for you to play with. If you find this video helpful, please leave a like, share the video, and consider subscribing. It really helps me out. Special thank you to Minicake and The Story of Us in a Bus for supporting me as members. If you want to see your name carved into the Hall of Insulin and get some special perks, then consider joining my channel too. As usual, I make my builds at level 125 using the Wretch as my starting class. These are just my personal preferences, and you can make these builds at any level you want using any class you want. The final stats will look a bit different, but the builds will still work just fine. Our first build is going to be an Icy Revenant. To realize the theme of being a spooky ghost, we're going to use the Bloodhound Step Ash of War, which lets you dodge attacks super easily by using a vanishing dodge. The Bloodhound Claws are the perfect choice for this, using the cold affinity so that we can proc both frostbite and bleed on enemies and absolutely shred them. For stats, we've got the usual 60 Vigor, which is easily the most important stat for any build. Always get 60 Vigor if you can. We've got 15 Mind for some FP overhead, because Bloodhound Step costs FP to use, and we've got 18 Endurance to medium roll with our equipped gear. Then for the damage stats, since we're using the cold Bloodhound Claws, we want to primarily focus on strength with some int and dex on the side. For optimal damage at this level, we've got 45 strength, 15 dex, boosted to 20 by Millicent's prosthesis, and 31 intelligence. Up next are the weapons. We're using the Bloodhound Claws with the Bloodhound Step Ash of War and the Cold Affinity. We've also got a dagger, which we'll use to cast the Golden Vow Ash of War for its 11.5% damage buff and 7.5% negation buff for 45 seconds. Since we've got some int to work with, I also included a Demi-Human Queen staff for casting some sorceries, which is the optimal staff for our stats. And finally, I also included a second dagger with the Assassin's Gambit Ash of War, which allows you to turn partially invisible and completely silences your footsteps for 30 seconds, allowing you to easily sneak up on enemies for backstabs and sneak attacks. Now let's move on to the talismans. Claws attack very quickly and cause a bleed buildup, so we've got the Lord of Blood's Exaltation to give us a 20% damage buff for 20 seconds after proccing a bleed on an enemy, and we've got the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia and Millicent's Prosthesis to boost our damage when we hit an enemy multiple times in a row. The Prosthesis also gives us plus 5 dex for slightly more optimal damage. Keep in mind that you can only get either the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia or Millicent's Prosthesis in a single playthrough. If you don't have both, then you should get the Prosthesis and use the regular Winged Sword Insignia instead of the Rotten one. Our final talisman is a flex slot, because I couldn't really think of anything to specifically synergize with this build, and so I went with the Dagger Talisman to make backstabs do 17% more damage. It fits the theme of a sneaky ghost guy turning invisible and killing shit, so why not? Alternatively, you can use something like the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman for 20% more physical negation, a Turtle Talisman for more stamina regen, maybe the Magic Scorpion Charm for some extra magic damage on the claws, or anything else that works for you. For armor, I decided to go with the Knight's Cavalry set and the Shadow Militiaman helm for its spooky ghostly look. Honestly, while the helm is kinda silly looking, this setup looks a lot cooler than I initially expected, and its black theme goes well with the sneaky theme. When it comes to the spells, I included a bunch just because we've got a bunch of intelligence to work with. This build is focused on the claws, so most of the spells are optional, and I'm not really going to go over them, but they should be self-explanatory. With that said, the 2 spells you will see me using are Unseen Form and Terra Magica. Unseen Form turns you partially invisible for 30 seconds. On its own, it's nothing amazing, but the invisibility effect stacks with Assassin's Gambit, so if you combine the 2, then you become nearly undetectable, making it really easy to sneak past enemies or sneak up on them for backstabs and sneak attacks. Just keep in mind that you need to keep reusing both the spell and the Ash of War, because they only last for 30 seconds each. As for Terra Magica, that creates a circle on the ground which boosts any magic damage you do by 22.5% while you're standing in it. If you can keep the boss near the circle, then it's a pretty significant damage increase, but it's not super practical with a melee weapon, so don't feel like you have to use it. It's more of a little bonus than anything. Finally, in our Wondrous Physic, we've got the Opaline Hard tier to increase all our negations by 15% for 3 minutes, making us tanky as fuck. And we've also got the Thorny Crack tier, which provides another multi-hit buff like the Winged Sword Insignia and Millicent's Prosthesis. With these 3 buffs active, plus Golden Vow and the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and optionally Terra Magica, Your attacks will do obscene amounts of damage as long as you can keep up the pressure on the enemy. Our next build was inspired by a request from a viewer, Flyza Fresh, who suggested a build using the Family Heads. The Family Heads is a flail with a unique intelligence scaling Ash of War, Familial Rancor, which does a surprising amount of damage when built properly. For stats, we've got 55 Vigor this time around because I needed a few extra points for Mind, considering this build is all about Ash of War spam. It's only a loss of like 80 health compared to 60 Vigor, so it's not a huge deal. We've got 20 Mind for FP to work with, and 17 Endurance to medium roll with our equipped gear. Then we've got the minimum 8 Strength, or 10 in my case because that's the Wretch's minimum, and 18 Dex to wield the Family Heads, and then as much Intelligence as possible to maximize Familial Rancor's damage. I also brought Faith up to 20 because I wanted to use the Tibia Summon spell as part of the skeleton theme of the build, but honestly, that shit sucks and I don't recommend it. So keep Faith at the minimum for your class and just put all those points into Intelligence. For our weapons, in addition to the Family Heads, we've also got 2 daggers. One of them has the Golden Vow Ash of War, and the other one is in the left hand and has the Sacred Order Ash of War. This is for something called Offsack. Sacred Order gives you a 10% buff to all damage you do while it's active, so if you have it on a weapon in your offhand, then it's basically a free damage buff. Keep in mind that you cannot two-hand the Family Heads, or else you will lose the Offsack buff. Finally, there's also an Academy Glintstone Staff for casting some sorceries. For talismans, we're going to be using a weapon skill that does magic damage and pretty decent poise damage, so I went with the Magic Scorpion Charm to boost our magic damage by 12% at the cost of taking 10% more physical damage, the Shard of Alexander to boost skill damage by 15%, and the Blade of Mercy to boost our damage by 20% after landing a critical hit. The fourth talisman is a flex slot, so I went with the Graven Mask Talisman to boost sorcery damage by 8%. However, I recommend you use something else like the Dragon Crest Great Shield for 20% more physical negation instead, because the sorceries are pretty secondary in this build. Again, we're mainly focusing on using Familial Rancor on the flail. For armor, I went with the Mausoleum Soldier set because the Bloody Surcoat looks pretty cool and spooky, and of course, I used the Royal Remains head to look like a skeleton man. If you want to really maximize your damage, then the Spellblade set should boost Familiar Rancor's damage by 2% per piece worn, as far as I'm aware, at the cost of looking like a goofy fuck. Up next are the spells, and as with the last build, they're mostly optional. The only particularly useful one is Terra Magica to boost our magic damage by 22.5% while standing in its range, and since we're using a ranged attack this time, it's much more practical for this build. I will also make note of Great Glintstone Shard, which is a solid bread and butter spell for casters. If you're fighting trash mobs or fast bosses, and you need a ranged attack which is faster than Familial Rancor, then Great Glintstone Shard is the way to go. Finally, in our Wondrous Physic, we've got the Opaline Heart tier to boost our negations by 15% for 3 minutes, and the Magic Shrouding tier to boost our magic damage by 20% for 3 minutes. Combined with Golden Vow, Terra Magica, Offsack, and our talismans, this will make Familial Rancor do spooky amounts of damage.
Ooga booga, ooga, ooga booga ooga, booga booga ooga booga, boo, ooga booga booga, booga, unga bunga, ooga booga, big, ooga booga, unga bunga, booga, a booga booga unga bunga, boo, booga, unga booga, booga, unga bunga, boo, boo boo, gabu, boo, unga bunga, gabuga booga, oogity boogity boo, unga bunga, booga, unga bunga, ooga booga, unga bunga. I got bang, I go bang, I got bang, I go bang, oh, me to go, I go bang, oh, bang, oh, I go bang, I go bang, I go, oh, I go bang, I go bang, I got bang, I go bang, I gave, I go bang, I got bang, I go bang, oh, I go bang, I go, bagel. Ah, booga, ooga booga, unga bunga, fway fway, unga booga, fway fway, booga unga bunga, ooga, unga bunga, fway fway, Unga bunga, booga booga unga, ooga repetitive, ooga booga saturated market, unga bunga, booga unga bunga unga. Unga bunga. Unga ooga booga. Unga bunga. Ooga ooga. Unga bunga. Oh. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Unga bunga. Ooh. Unga bunga ooga. Oogity boogity boo. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Synergy. Ooga booga. Hunga. Ooga booga. Unga bunga ooga. Aga bunga ooga bunga bunga. Unga booga boo. Unga booga booga boo. Unga bunga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Unga bunga. Unga booga. Booga 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 booga. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Ooga bunga unga. Dooga. Booga bunga. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Unga booga. Triumph. Ooga booga. Unga booga. Boogie. Unga bunga. Boogity boo. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Bunga boom. Unga bunga boo. Boogity 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 boo. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Unga bunga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga boo. Unga bunga. Unga ooga. Ooga unga bunga. Ooga. Unga bunga. Bunga umbunga. Unga bunga. Unga ooga booga. Woo. Unga bunga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Hunga bunga. Hunga bunga. Ooga ooga booga. Unga bunga. Ooga bunga. Ooga bunga. Hearing protection. Bunga unga ooga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Come. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Unga bunga. Ooga booga. Ooga booga. Unga bunga. Ooga booga. Unga bunga. Ooga. Ooga. Unga bunga. Hurrah. Ooga booga. Unga booga. Ooga unga. Ooga booga. Unga booga. Booga unga booga. Booga. Unga bunga. Booga. Unga booga. Unga. Booga booga boo.
In this Elden Ring video, I'm going to be showing you my Bloodhound General build, which is an evolution of my Bloodhound Cum Dumpster build, where we play a sort of pure bleed build that is very effective throughout the entire game, or at least as far as I've gone into it in my playthrough. I'm really just trying to pump these things out for ad revenue. So yeah, the most important part of this build is definitely the weapons, and so we're going to be using a couple OP ones that I heard about on TikTok. The main one is the Bloodhound's Fang, which is really just a super strong weapon. Definitely one of, if not the best weapon in the game. I've got it at +7 because it's pretty early game and I kind of just throw together sloppy videos as I play through the game once because, first come, first serve. It's important for my bottom line that I pump out videos as quickly as possible and that I'm the first to make them so that I'm the one who shows up in search results. But yeah, its high bleed buildup makes it godly for proccing bleeds on any enemy. And to complement it, we've got a couple other weapons that I found, like the pulley bow for an OP ranged option. I've got that at +2 because I ran out of somber smithing stones after I sold them all, and I can't buy any more because I killed EG. We've got the blasphemous blade, which I think is bugged in my game because it doesn't let me use its super OP Ash of War, but it's still basically the best weapon in the game. We've also got Vare's Bouquet, which I got when Vare suddenly attacked me for no reason. It's a bleed weapon, so it's essentially the best weapon in the game. I also found the Manor Tower shield about 20 minutes ago, and so I'm using that too. And as a great shield, it's more or less the best weapon in the game and will easily carry you to at least new game +5. And then finally, I've got the Claymore, which any Souls vet will know is definitely the best weapon in any From Software game, or at least that's what I read on Reddit, though I did also play Dark Souls 3 for about an hour, and so I'm basically a Souls vet too. Picking the talismans for this build was a real doozy, but I did some research and I've got the best talismans in the game now. First is the Radagon Source Seal and Marika's Source Seal, which give you an incredible 40 free levels by boosting all of your stats by +5. Stats are super important in this game. You basically win this game by leveling up. It does take a little while to level up because farming the trolls is kind of time consuming and sometimes you die to them and lose all your runes, and so having these free levels is definitely overpowered, possibly even broken, and you do not want to neglect these talismans. We've also got the Bullgoat's Talisman to boost our poise, which is already formidable because we're using Radagon's armor, which I saw in a Joseph Anderson video, and so with this talisman equipped you'll have 96 poise, which is one of the breakpoints I think. Somebody on Reddit said that at least, so it's probably true. And then we've got the Crucible Feather Talisman, which gives you extra iframes when you roll. And this is the important one to have, because we're going to be in heavy load from all the OP weapons and armor we have. But even if it weren't for that, it would still be a broken talisman. And as a Souls vet, I can tell you that it's really important for you to learn the limitations of your build and work around them. The attributes of this build are just as important as the weapons, and because we're using bleed weapons like the Bloodhound's Fang, we're going to want to level up Arcane because that increases the bleed damage you do. So I leveled that up before anything else and got it to 92. With Marika's Source Seal, we have an effective 97 Arcane to make us really overpowered. I would have it at 99, but again, I just kind of make these videos using whatever I've got in my current playthrough of the game at the time, so I'm not there yet. The most important stat really is probably endurance, definitely the best stat in the game. If you don't have enough endurance, then you won't have enough stamina to roll. The enemy attacks in this game are basically broken and impossible to dodge, so you're definitely going to want to be able to panic roll as much as possible. So I've got 48 endurance and another 5 from the Radagon Source Seal to really just be as OP as possible. I accidentally leveled up my Vigor to 30. If you're copying this build, then you can definitely just ignore Vigor. 20 to 30 is more than enough for the endgame areas, especially since we've got a shield and we've got the Crucible Feather Talisman for extra iframes when we dodge. Basically, as long as you don't get hit, then you'll be fine. I also just found an OP item called a Wonderful Physique that lets you get free buffs, so I'm using the Windy Crystals here, which gives me even more iframes for my rolls, and also the Stone Barb Cracked here so I do extra poise damage to enemies, so every attack you do is going to be really overpowered and broken. Anyway, that's it for this build, guys, so be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, join my channel as a member, go to my website and watch all the advertisements, follow me on Facebook, subscribe to me on Twitter. Whoa. Holy shit. I think I was in a fugue state for a minute there. Oh my god. Jesus Christ, yeah. That is an absolutely terrifying build. How about we just never speak about this ever again? My name is Diabetor, and I will catch you later.